Hey guys, it's your boy John Stargarian here, and I just wanted to talk briefly about my play on Conor McGregor against Donald Cerrone. If you like the video, please drop a like and subscribe. So right now I'm playing McGregor for 3 units to either win by KO, TKO, or disqualification. The line I got for that is minus 167. And I think there's a lot of value on that line. And to be honest, I'm actually considering putting more money down on McGregor on his money line. I'm still haven't decided for sure. I'm kind of monitoring the line right now. Don't love the idea of playing a minus 300 line. I think there's some chance it comes back into minus 250 or so, but I could be wrong about that, and so I guess we'll see. But my point is, I think McGregor should be, he's a deserved favorite here, and frankly, I think there's a good case that he should be an even heavier favorite. And I think a lot of the discussion that's gone on about this fight and about, which McGregor are we going to get, is kind of erroneous, and I don't think there's a whole lot of evidence to suggest that we should expect to see some kind of lesser form of Conor McGregor. And I think that for a couple reasons. So I'll break down, I think, the narrative issues with this fight first, and then I'll kind of just go into what I think of the fight. So again, I hope you guys enjoy. So basically, the narrative around McGregor right now is, he might not be the same guy. He's coming off this huge layoff. Well, I mean, first of all, that's not really true. The last time he fought, I believe, was October 2018. So we're talking about, I don't know, what, 15 months off? Which, I mean, it's not an insignificant layoff at all. I'm not saying it is. But again, we're not talking about like a Matt Wyman didn't fight for 5 years and coming back to fight. And additionally, he's 31. So it's not like he's coming back as, and Father Time likely will have caught up to him. 31 is really, should be one of your prime years, to be honest. So just taking that on its face, I don't think there's a lot of reason just based on the layoff alone to be particularly concerned about him. The other part of it is obviously all the out of the octagon stuff that's gone on with Conor. And, obviously he's had 2 sexual assault allegations. Not great, but I mean, that's the case. And then he's gotten in trouble for smashing a phone and punching a man at a bar. None of which looks great. And he's obviously been living a pretty hardcore lifestyle outside of the octagon, which I'm not saying is good, and I'm not saying we should expect him to be better because of that. At the same time, though, I'm not really sure that we should be assuming he's going to come back as like a different form of himself. So like take, let's say, John Jones, who's probably the best fighter in UFC history. John Jones is known for being an absolute party animal. He's had a ton of legal issues, ton of issues with drugs and alcohol. And yet, despite all of that, he's, continued to fight at the highest level in the sport. And my point is not that Conor McGregor is John Jones, but that, we don't have really much to draw from to suggest, Conor's been partying a lot outside the octagon, so therefore he's going to be a decreased version of himself. The evidence just doesn't suggest that. So I think the idea that Conor is going to come back diminished, as I think somewhat based in the hope of people who just really don't like him. Obviously, he's a polarizing figure, and I can't blame anybody for not liking him. But so I think there's reason. And then the last part of this is, I think when you look at it, we know Conor's made a ton of money. He made a ton of money from the Floyd fight. He made a ton of money from the fight with Khabib. He probably doesn't need the money. So it's like, why come back at 31 years old when you're wealthy if you don't care about fighting? Clearly, he does care about fighting. And the truth of the matter is the UFC won't call it this, but I will, and I think anybody who actually wants to think critically about this will. This is a tune-up fight for Conor, and for Cowboy, it's a Lifetime Achievement Award. Cowboy's about to get the biggest payday of his career. He's been a company man, does anything they ask of him. So, and for Conor, let's be honest, he probably could use a tune-up fight, especially if he's going to fight one of Masvidal or Khabib after this. So, I mean, that's really what this is, and I just don't think there's a lot of reason that we should believe he's going to come back diminished. And I think we should expect him to come back at least somewhat close to what he is. No worse than 80%. And frankly, I'm expecting him at 31 and in the kind of shape he's looked in based on the photos and the stuff you've heard out of his camp to come back and, not much diminished at all. On the other side of things, we have Cowboy Cerrone, who is one of, obviously, he's a legend of the sport. And recently, until his last 2 losses against Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, had a semi-resurgence and was getting kind of close to a title shot himself. And I think that's partially driving the sentiment here that this could be potentially a close fight, and why the line implies that this is a closer fight than it is. And the reason I say that is, prior to that 3-fight winning streak, Cerrone had lost 4 of 5. He'd been finished a couple times. He was viciously finished by Jorge Masvidal. And then, he had a fight with Mike Perry, and And, he did go on that 3-fight winning streak, and that looked great. But I think that streak might have been exaggerated what he is, and people forget about what had happened before. So he'd lost 4 or 5 fights. He comes into the Perry fight, and, Perry's a decent fighter. He's not a great fighter by any means, though. And, Perry made just a critical mistake. Instead of sitting and striking with him, he took him down and got himself submitted. And then, he fought Alexander Hernandez next. And Hernandez, he's a decent prospect, but we still really don't know what he is. And what we can say definitively is he's very green. So Hernandez came into that fight clearly unprepared. Cerrone's a veteran, and Cerrone was able to just pick him apart from range and win that fight. Again, impressive, but we're not talking about him beating a championship-level fighter. And then the last fight on that streak was Al Iaquinta. And I like Al, and Al is a good fighter. But, that's all he is. I think his stock was a bit too high from the Kevin Lee fight. And that's partially because he matches up with Lee pretty well, and also because Lee had a bad game plan. But Iaquinta is not a guy, beating Al Iaquinta does not qualify you for fighting for a championship, for instance. So it was an impressive fight, and he dominated it. I bet him that fight. I was really excited about it. He put on a show. But again, we're looking at, so what did that 3-fight winning streak mean? Did it mean he had a resurgence? Did it mean, Daddy Cowboy, he had a son, now all of a sudden we're seeing the best version of him? No, the truth of the matter is he went and fought a bunch of guys who just weren't really on his level or weren't there yet and beat them. And after that he fought Tony Ferguson, and he held his own for about 3 minutes in that fight, but then Ferguson really took over, and I'm pretty confident had, that fight gone to the 3rd round and not been stopped after the 2nd, Ferguson likely would have finished him there. He was absolutely putting it on him. And then in his last fight, he fought Justin Gaethje and got knocked out in the 1st round, looked a bit old, looked stiff, looked slow. And so that's what I'm getting at here is I think that version of Cowboy we saw against Ferguson and Gaethje, again, not a bad fighter, but that's who Cowboy Cerrone is at this point. He's a guy who is, not very durable. If he fights lesser competition, he'll beat them, but is going to struggle against the best, and is especially going to struggle with power punchers. So again, I think a lot of the narratives in this fight are kind of driving the line and the price and kind of the public sentiment. And I just think when you actually look at the fight, McGregor has a significant advantage here. Frankly, I actually think I give McGregor about an 85% chance to win this, which is around -500, which gives you current value, great value on the betting line. But also, I think, Cowboy's durability is pretty shot. We saw it against Gaethje. Obviously, Gaethje hits hard. We saw it against Jorge Masvidal. We've seen him rocked. We saw him knocked out by Darren Till, who really doesn't knock out many people. And so it's hard. And, that narrative went away because of the 3-fight winning streak he had. But the truth is, I think that's what he is at this point. And now he's going into a fight with Conor McGregor. And, so in that fight, he's actually going to be at a reach disadvantage by 1 inch. And so it's like Conor's not going to have to come to him like Alex Hernandez did and have to walk through damage at range. He's going to have a striking battle with Conor. And I just can't, I can imagine a scenario where he doesn't get knocked out. But I think the most likely ending of that fight by far is Conor finishing him. In fact, I'd go as far as to say I think that's 65 to 70% possibility that Conor finishes him, and likely very early in that fight. But then even beyond it, so the question is how, so just breaking down the fight from who could win or lose. So I asked, how does Cerrone win that fight? He could win it by a head kick for sure. But I've seen people suggest, well, maybe he gets dropped and Conor goes into his guard and he could guard something. And I guess that's possible. I just really don't see it. Conor's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He trains at SPG, which, while he's the most famous fighter out of there, it's actually a really good jiu-jitsu camp. You have Brad Katona there, James Gallagher, Dylan Dennis, a lot of high-level grapplers there. And we actually saw Conor in his first fight with Nate Diaz go into Nate's guard at the end of the 1st round and was there for about almost 40 seconds. And Nate never got close to putting any kind of submission on him. So the idea that Conor's going to drop him, Cowboy's going to be hurt, and he's going to somehow toss up a submission from the bottom and guard sub Conor, I just think that's a very, very small possibility. So if that's a small possibility, and could he just, I've seen people say maybe he could wrestle him to death. The thing is, Cowboy's not a good wrestler. He's a great submission grappler, but as a wrestler, he hasn't landed more than 1 takedown in a fight since 2016, and I believe he's only landed multiple takedowns in a fight either 2 or 3 times his entire career in the UFC. So his wrestling, his takedown just abilities isn't that good, and he only lands, he only lands 1.21 takedowns per 15 minutes. And so it's like, could he take Conor down in this fight? Yeah, he could. Maybe he'll take him down 1 or 2 times. But 1, can he hold him down? And I don't think that's very likely. Khabib held him down, but Khabib's maybe the best fighter in the UFC. And 2, he's going to struggle to get it there, and he's going to have to get inside Conor's reach to do it. And I just don't think that's something that's very likely. I just struggle to see how he could implement some wrestling-based game plan where he's able to ragdoll Conor. For him to win this fight, in my mind, his best chance comes by, some kind of a knockout, like a head kick or something crazy. And I guess the last scenario would be winning by decision and that Conor gasses. This is another narrative that's been going around. It's been going around for much of Conor's career since really the first Diaz fight. And again, I am a Conor fan, but I'm just not sure that there's a lot of evidence to back up the idea that Conor McGregor has a bad gas tank. Let's just look at the facts here. Conor McGregor, when he was younger, he fought Max Holloway. He fought him with a partially torn ACL, and he took him down 4 times in that fight. He was still landing takedowns late in round 3. Cardio looked fine. His cardio, frankly, the first Diaz fight, he did gas, no question. But that's largely because he came in, emptied the gas tank, trying to finish him early, threw a bunch of spinning stuff at him, and was just looking to finish, and those are all high-energy moves, and they sapped him. The second Diaz fight, look, yeah, he slowed down for sure. But I wouldn't say he gassed out. He won round 4, and round 5 was probably a toss-up to the last 40 seconds or so of the round. So, yeah, he slowed down. And also consider who he was against. Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is going to push as heavy a pace as anybody can. He'll be in your face from the minute the fight starts to the minute the fight ends. That's the kind of guy that can really slow Conor down. The kind of guy that's going to make him work the entirety of the fight. And Cowboy's just not really that guy when you think about it. Now, he's not that guy output-wise, and it's not his fighting style. He's not going to bring aggressive pressure, opinion to defense, and just work nonstop. In fact, I tweeted this out a little while ago, but Cowboy's record for significant strikes in his career, his personal record in a 5-round fight, was against Al Iaquinta, and he landed 138 significant strikes. Conor, the last time he fought at 170 pounds, was against Nate Diaz, and Conor landed 164 significant strikes in 5 rounds, and he also added 3 knockdowns. And Nate's as durable as it comes, he was able to knock him down. So this idea that, Cowboy could maybe just outwork Conor after he gasses, I guess it's possible. I just don't think it's likely, and I don't think there's much in the tape or in their histories that suggests that that's, a very reasonable path to victory for Cowboy. You never know, crazy things could happen. Maybe Cowboy rocks him in multiple rounds, but Conor's always had a pretty good chin. Even when he was rocked by Khabib, he bounced up almost immediately and threw a flying knee, and that's the biggest shot he's eaten in his career. And so it's if it goes in the event that Cowboy's able to weather the damage that Conor's going to throw at him, which I really don't think he's going to, I just struggle to see him being able to win 3 rounds. I think Conor's a better striker. I don't think the grappling advantage for Cowboy is pronounced enough that he could lean on it to win 2 to 3 rounds in this fight. And yeah, so I struggle to see it. So ultimately, I'd give Cowboy about a 15% chance to win this fight. 10% via KO. Maybe some kind of a head kick, and maybe 5% he catches Conor in a scramble and subs him. That's possible. But I really don't think he's going to win a decision, especially because if it plays out on the feet for most of this fight, like it likely will, I think Conor's going to hurt him and win rounds that way. And I just think Conor's more likely to outvolume him. The numbers suggest it. Everything about this fight suggests that. The only reason I think people think this line isn't giving Cowboy a fair chance is because it's Cowboy and we all love him, and it's Conor and a lot of people hate Conor. Now, maybe it's possible that I'm misreading the situation, and maybe I should take Conor's legal issues more into consideration and his stuff out of the octagon. But like I said earlier, we have no precedent for it. It's impossible to gauge. Maybe I should be more conservative about this, but I just, like I said, John Jones, the guy, he's a freaking party animal, and the guy is still an absolute killer in the cage. And I just don't think there's any reason that we should be, or I don't think there's a great reason that we should be factoring that into capping this fight. So consequently, like I said, I'm playing 3 units on Conor by KO, TKO, disqualification at -167. And I may play this even more on the straight money line, depending if it comes down or not. Don't love the idea of playing it for -300. Even though I do think there's value, I just don't love playing lines that big. But if it does come down, below, like say to the -275, -250 range, I'll likely put more on it. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like it and agree with me, follow me. Let's make some money together. If you disagree with me, fade me. Let's see if you make money off of me. Either way, I hope you enjoyed. Take it easy. Bye.